warm welcome to you all. Hope you'll thoroughly enjoy our programme.
Oh, hello.
It's Reel Britannia, a very British podcast about very British movies, with just a hint, yes, the merest hint of professionalism. Scott here with me is my friend and my co-host Stephen. How's that professionalism grabbing you, mate? Okay?
Well, it's the standard I expect, shall we say.
You think we'd have learnt to have run with this by now. It's 4 years, isn't it? Or three years? Who knows? I'm losing track of where we are on this. We're heading rapidly towards episode 100 as well. Do you realise that?
Absolutely, yeah. And, you know, obviously, at some point we'll have to make a decision what we're going to do as a film, rather than mull it over and then come to a decision about 2 days before.
Do you know what? Something has just hit me, you just saying that. We had a conversation off air literally seconds ago about what our next movie was going to be with our friend Anthony. And it's just suddenly, we were racking our brains, literally, weren't we, for 5 minutes trying to work out what we decided?
Yeah.
Anthony had picked The Third Man.
Of course he had.
Yes, and we were going to save that for episode 100. Do you remember? It's all suddenly come flooding back to me.
And I knew we'd said something, but I couldn't remember what it was. And I thought, you know, this is why I write things down usually, but I couldn't find where I'd written it down.
Oh, dear. Right.
That's right.
Is the fact that we're not recording as regularly as we were, we're not talking to each other as much as we used to, lockdown has got to everybody. It's addled our brains, mate.
Yeah, and I think we're, you know, me and you are both in the situation where we're still working
Yes.
and have been all the way through this. So obviously for us, it's a different kind of busy. So yeah, I think a lot of these factors have come into play, and it's why we both jointly drew a blank on that one and knew that we were wanting to record again with him, you know, in the near future, but for the life of us we couldn't remember what we'd said.
Now, usually you throw in some comment about it being my age, but you was equally to blame.
No,
you were equally
I'm
to blame.
Co-conspirator on this one. I'm equally guilty. Yeah.
Talking of addled brains, The Butcher Boy.
Yeah. How did that work out for you?
All I'm going to say at the moment is that when you mentioned it, you know, last episode, one, I don't think I'd actually seen the movie. I was actually aware of it either. 2, therefore it's going to be a first time watch for me. And 3, I went in completely blind. No synopsis, no trailer. All I knew was that it featured Stephen Rea and Fiona Shaw. And I need to know what your history of this is in a second when we get to the review, and what you thought of it and why you chose it. Because let me just say, it wasn't what I was expecting at all.
I think even if you'd had some kind of coaching towards what the film was, you'd still find out it wasn't what you expected.
No.
It's not a film that's easy to categorise or explain or even, I suppose, warn people about, I suppose is the word.
No, the only word I can use, and I've seen it described, I think, on Letterboxd or IMDb or somewhere, someone described it as a tragicomedy.
Yes.
That's part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's...
I'll tell you what, let's play the
really,
trailer.
Yeah.
Gather our thoughts and try and make something of what we watched over the last hour and a half. Here's the trailer. We'll be back after this.
From the director of The Crying Game, An Interview with a Vampire, Neil Jordan's best movie yet, The Butcher Boy is destined to be one of the best movies of 1998. Vital and original, a keenly felt, startlingly dark comedy.
I was only a lad when I became known on account of what I'd done.
Oh, you!
Known forever as the notorious Francie Brady.
Francie Brady, the Butcher Boy.
We're all gathered here to pray for the redemption of Francis Brady.
What's this world coming to?
And all those people like Mrs. Nugent, well, you knew they were no better than pigs.
Pigs! pigs.
No better than a pig.
Disgusting! Fine!
In a blink of an eye, I was off on me travels. Away from Ma, God bless her heart. Away from Da.
He loved me to me, son.
Don't worry, Francie.
I want you to tell me now the worst thing you ever done.
I did nothing bad.
Quick! Around the back!
No boy is so bad that you can't find a scrap of goodness in him.
From the internationally acclaimed award-winning novel by Patrick McCabe comes a story of innocence undone, fantasies unbound, and imagination run wild.
God loves every one of us, Francie.
When some men look back upon their youth, it's hard for them to remember. When I look back upon it, it's harder to forget.
There we go. That's The Butcher Boy, released in the UK 20th of February 1998. Directed by Neil Jordan, written by Patrick McCabe based on his novel. Starring, as we said, Stephen Rea, Fiona Shaw, and a stunning performance by young Eamon Owens. Your choice this week, Stephen, mate. What's the synopsis, if we can sort of get our heads around it?
In 1960s Ireland, Francie Brady lives a playful, fantasy-filled childhood of a normal boy, despite having a violent alcoholic father and a manic, depressive, suicidal mother. Set against a backdrop of alcoholism, bullying, child abuse, domestic violence, mental illness, murder, suicide, and the transience of childhood friendships, as well as the fear of aliens, communists, and the atomic apocalypse, the pressure grows on Francie's sanity. And it is a comedy.
It is.
Very dark, though.
Could you imagine my reaction to this movie, not knowing what you've just read out, and then witnessing all of this unfold in like an hour and 40 minutes? I mean, as marvellous as your synopsis was, can you just, first of all, mate, just flesh it out a little bit? Because that is, it's not vague, it's just intriguing. If somebody else doesn't know anything about this movie like I did, they're going to think, what on earth did these two just watch? I mean, put some flesh on the bones of that, mate. Just tell us a bit more about Francie and his mother, his father, the priests, and everything that goes on in this.
Well, Francie starts out, as you say, it's the usual boyhood of the 60s, where he's comic books and watching the Lone Ranger on television, and then from a sideline innocently watching his parents have social gatherings where obviously with rural Ireland there's plenty of drinking and dancing and singing going on, and the church involved in things, and it seems like it's just a typical story of what would be the case there, but because of the darkness in his parental background, and then his own obviously grip upon reality loosening, it's narrated all the way through by Stephen Rea as the adult Francie.
Yes.
Which is a bit of a different take on things in a way, and it is kind of not just narrating as in saying, in some, in this time frame this happened, or at this time, he's actually he's also the voice in the young lad's head.
He's having conversations with the child on the screen. And
he's it's like almost a television announcer at certain points, announcing his character, and as you say, having a conversation in internal dialogue with himself, which relates to what's going on around, and it all the way through, it's kind of that childish look on what's going on as things are unraveling around him and his own sanity is unraveling. His perspective on his sanity unraveling, rather than you seeing it just from the outside, which would be a lot darker, because we see that in many films. We see somebody gradually losing it and becoming violent and unpredictable, and vicious sometimes in their behaviour towards other people, his internal monologue or sometimes dialogue puts it in a different context, and that's where the comedy comes from, because it's seeing it from this unravelling, which doesn't mean that some of the shocking scenes are any less shocking in a way, because there is some incredibly dark scenes in it, in a way, but it doesn't leave you feeling broken by them, or that's a ripple of darkness that continues to then affect the narrative in a way. It's treated in a different way, and I'm not saying it's treated lightheartedly, because it is the substance of the film, and it is in a way, actually, I think is very credible in a way of examining mental health and also the treatment of mental health in the 60s. But it's written in such a way that there are lines in it that are just funny, that you can repeat. I mean, leaning over a stream and shouting to the fish, "Hey fish, fuck off!"
Yes,
or "Feck off," and that that's the quote you made to me about the tub of Guinness, calling a man a tub of Guinness, and it's and because it's quite balls out with the character. He's not somebody who's hiding in an attic, sneaking out to do anything that he does bad or anything. He's in the centre all the time, just living the life at 300 miles an hour. Yeah. And even when he's grabbed and taken into a boys' institution and things, he doesn't stop at that 300 miles an hour.
He goes to 400 miles an hour, if anything, doesn't it?
And there's also a bit of it where the different people he's meeting, although he's still the core him, he's kind of feeding into their madness as well a lot of the time. Yeah. The gardener in the boys' home, where he's feeding into his criticism of the priests and stuff, and elsewhere when he's on the road travelling to Dublin, and he's the guy who's going on about Khrushchev and the Russians, and he's just feeding into that and agreeing with him and building upon what he's saying about the Russians. And across the board, his own insanity is actually in some way encouraging insanity in other people. And certainly some of the priest behaviour might be seen to be taken further, because he's almost interacting with it innocently. But that's not intentionally. But how much of it intentionally when he's encouraging other people with their insanity, with drinking and the whole thing about the Russians? I don't know. I mean, it's certainly his paranoia about one particular member of the community, his nemesis, is great to see how that plays out. And you don't see any sign of her actually deserving any of them.
No, not at all. It's bullying to the nth degree, isn't it, as well? Yeah. And it's fair to say that every character has a quirk of some nature in this. There are no normal characters, for want of a better word. Each one has a little distinct quirk, as I say, to them, And initially, when I first started watching this, and as you know, I went in blind, I didn't think this was a movie set in the 1960s. Okay, I just thought, okay, this is a flashback at the beginning, and it's going to lead us up to possibly Stephen Rea as an adult in the 80s or whatever it may have been.
It kind of did, but not only in a tiny little way.
Yeah, but that's for me. They hadn't seen the movie. That's what I was thinking.
That was the sort of the 3-minute epilogue. Yeah, rather than that kicking in at 10-minute mark, which you probably expected.
But for me, it was an added bonus, because I've now got a movie set in the 1960s, which, as you know, is one of my favourite eras with regard to culture and music and everything that goes with it. So I'm thinking, this is good. Okay, so we've got a movie that's now set back in the swinging 60s, but it's taking a look at the swinging 60s in a country that I'm not familiar with. Those events happening.
It didn't. The 60s didn't happen in the rural Ireland until somewhere in the 90s.
Oh yeah, but they've still got the same concerns, as we say. They're talking about the Russians, and the Bay of Pigs is mentioned at one point, and They're watching the same TV shows. You can hear the music playing. You know, it's the same sort of rock and roll records from the early 60s in the background. And it was great. You know, that bit really got to me. But going in blind, as I'm watching this character unfold, young Francie...
Unravel.
Unravel is probably a bloody good word, actually. I'm thinking, similar to when we spoke about Richard Burton recently in Look Back in Anger.
Yeah.
Where I mentioned, you know, to modern day audiences, Richard Burton would be seen as mentally unwell.
Yeah.
There is something there with Richard Burton's personality and his character that nowadays would be diagnosed as something medical. And of course, I'm watching young Francie thinking, this kid's got something wrong with him. Not knowing where this is going to go. We're going to have to keep this spoiler free for the last 20 minutes of the movie, because although it touches on very, very dark subjects and subject matter throughout the movie, it gets as dark as hell in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And to watch him unravel, as you say, for me, watching it blind, I'm thinking, okay, I still don't know where this is going. I'm intrigued to find out where it's going to go. And what made it more of an interesting journey for me was these characters that he might only meet once, they may only appear in one scene, but each one has got its own distinct personality and its own thing that he bounces off of and takes advantage of a lot of the time as well. Absolutely marvellous. I'll give you my rating at some point towards the end, which, as you know, is usually based on my enjoyment of the movie, not, you know, the technical quality of the film. And I think you'll be sort of pleasantly surprised as to what I say. But for me, I mean, okay, I knew Stephen Rea was in it, I knew Fiona Shaw was in it, but there's some great, well, not even cameos, but there's some great other character performances in here, because Ian Hart, Uncle Allo, to see him. Brendan Gleeson. Now, this must have been, what was this, 1997, 98. So it's about 4 or 5 years after Braveheart, so he's still fairly young in his career, Brendan Gleeson. And Milo O'Shea, as Father Sullivan, is still alive at this point. So Milo O'Shea is in this movie. We will sort of touch on a few of these, but the one I want to mention, and I think you did mention this to me when you said we were going to be doing this, Sinead O'Connor as the Virgin Mary. Now, if anybody's in any doubt as to where this film... you can't judge the tone of this movie. Even when you're watching it, you can't judge the tone of this movie. But Neil Jordan, when asked about why he cast Sinead O'Connor as the Virgin Mary, his simple answer was, oh, she looked like her.
Yeah.
And she's quite a foul-mouthed Virgin Mary as well. Yeah.
And, you know, obviously her own subsequent life and issues with mental health, and also with religion, going from ripping up a picture of the Pope to be, you know, becoming almost a cardinal in this really weird subsect of Catholicism and weirdness. Any kind of foul-mouthedness from her character, it isn't really noticeable, considering the just the general tone of swearing amongst the rest of the cast. There is a thing, I think, which was proved by the likes of Father Ted and stuff, where swearing done in an Irish accent tends to be more overlooked and seen as just natural cadence rather than actual swearing.
It's punctuation.
Whereas, you know, although I don't think there was a swear word that came out of the cast member from Father Ted that did appear in this.
Hanlon was in it, wasn't he? Yes, that's right. Yeah,
playing a different role because this was during. I think this was done between the second and third series of Father Ted. I think he did this.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
But yeah, there's multiple people in this that are, you know, obviously fine performances throughout. Every single individual, I mean, puts in a cracking performance. Particularly the lead, like you say, Eamon Owens, who never acted before. This was his first film. That's a tour de force in anybody's acting career to have this, and it really, you know, carries the film. I think, you know, if you needed an actor that was able to do what he did, and whether he's just got particular. I've not really seen him in anything else. I don't know whether.
Well, I'll tell you what he was in after this. He was in Angela's Ashes.
That's a cheery film.
Exactly, and the Magdalene Sisters. You know, any depressing Irish movie of the late 90s, he was the child actor in it. But from what I read, I don't think he was actually from an acting school or drama school or anything like that. He was cast, and his brother, also his younger brother, appears in the film, just on sight by the casting director that spotted him.
And Joe as well, who played his best friend in the film, was also from his. They were both from the same secondary school.
Yeah,
locally to the filming.
It's an incredible performance. You know, there's two types of child actor. I've said this before, mate. You know, you've got your, I don't know, Henry Thomas from E.T. or Ricky Schroeder from The Champ level of child acting. Okay, faultless. And then you get, do you remember the kid in American Werewolf in London in the zoo who has his balloon stolen?
Yeah.
Mummy, a naked man came along and stole my balloons. Him. That's the bottom level.
Yeah.
You know, but luckily, Eamon Owens is up there with the Ricky Schroeder's Henry Thomas level, because faultless performance, and probably quite a stressful performance for him, because he's like a whirlwind throughout this. There is no moment and no scene in this film where he is sitting down quiet, apart from there's one little bit where the family are singing when Uncle Allo comes home and he's just watching the proceedings. But he's just this whirlwind throughout the movie. It's an incredible performance from him.
And in virtually every scene.
Yeah, he does. He dominates the movie completely.
You know, you get some child actors and actresses who are quite precocious and come across as a bit too forced and overplayed. And you just go, no, I'm not buying that. There are some that are just wooden reading lines and can understand difficult at younger ages. But then you've got some that are so incredible that you're just thinking that, you know, there's only a small percentage of adult actors that could do that kind of performance. Unfortunately, I think it's noticeable that a lot of actors and actresses that start out doing these kind of things, like his performance, do seemingly burn out and because the intensity of the roles they keep going and doing, then they burn out and they don't end up having an entire career, and vice versa. Some of the greatest actors and actresses that we've had in that gritty performance level are ones that don't come to it until later on in life. There's not many that can keep that up all the way through without either having to diverge into, you know, doing facile comedy roles to give themselves some light relief, or just taking a break entirely, because it seems the intensity of it. And his performance, I mean, he's fantastic, and I can't fault the despite there being faces that are put in there, and one or two people that might be seen as being put in there because they're just Irish people that are known to the watching public, or they're just a cameo role, like Sean Hughes being put in there as a psychiatrist for 2 minutes. I think that, you know, the performances are still all incredibly credible. A number of faces, that we know from all sorts of things over the years, is just cropping up again, and some of them are your default Irishmen to have in a film, and you're sort of counting how many of these have been in Father Ted or been in something else. But I was surprised about that. I was actually expecting, when I went to go do the Hall of Fame, I was expecting there to be some crossover with Waking Ned.
That's the sort of movie I was expecting, a sort of a Waking Ned, Commitments, Sing Street type, gentle Irish comedy. Not this brainstorm of a movie that sort of, it uneased me, this movie, because I didn't know where it was going to go. And
no, this is not a gentle comedy. This is more strapping you onto the bonnet of the car and driving full pelt through a forest.
Be prepared, listeners, if you haven't seen this movie. You know, it wore me out. It really did. It's not good a man of my age to be submitted to something like that. Talking of the Hall of Fame, I doubt if there's many hall botherers today, but let's jangle your keys. Let's take a walk up the path, mate. Let's have a look and see if there's anybody in there. Okay, the Village Hall of Fame. Now, Stephen is our curator, and basically it's here that we log anybody that's appeared on the show more than 3 times. They get inducted into the Hall of Fame. But as we've said on many occasions, this is only the Reel Britannia. We're not worthy enough to have a Hall of Fame. It's the Village Hall of Fame, which is almost quite suited for a movie of this nature as well, having a little Village Hall of Fame. So, anybody there knocking on the door? Anybody inducted this week, mate?
Nobody inducted. No. We've got only 2 people who were previous appearances, so they're knocking on the door, as you put it. There's a guy called Tony Raw. I think his surname is it's pronounced Rohar. And he in the film played one of the bogmen lunatics that was decided to start playing treating the chapel service in the asylum as being a football match, and he runs down the middle kicking a ball. He'll be recognised by some people as being in Ricky Gervais's TV series Derek. He played his long lost father, and he's a familiar face from a number of things over the years because he's been acting for several decades really. So he was previously in The Long Good Friday.
Interesting. Was he probably one of the IRA guys at the beginning then? Yeah,
I would imagine he must have been. Yeah, and then we've got also on the list, which you've already mentioned his name. We've got Michael O'Shea.
Milo O'Shea.
Milo O'Shea.
Yes,
sorry. Yes. He's been in plenty of things that we've seen over the years, just because he's just one of those.
A career spanning decades. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we've had him before in things, and strangely enough, he won't be far off going into the Village Hall of Fame, I suspect, because he was in Theatre of Blood before.
Yes.
He's in this. His next appearance on this podcast, in my prediction, will be that he was in Carry On Cabby.
He is in Carry On Cabby, yes.
So when Carry On Cabby comes, him stepping into the hall, getting his picture on the wall in a wonky frame.
Brilliant.
But other than that, no. I mean, obviously notable that we've got, as I say, a few people in there that you've already mentioned, and Stephen Rea, I imagine, is somebody who will at some point be into the Hall of Fame.
Definitely.
But strangely enough, not the first out of this cast.
No, Brendan Gleason.
Going back to what we always say. Yeah, Brendan Gleason as well. Recognisable face to people elsewhere, and like you say, Ian Hart. There's any number of people in this who are recognisable to the public, but haven't yet had enough performances. On
the show here. I've just seen a photo of the guy you mentioned earlier, Tony Raw. I'm sure he's the guy in The Long Good Friday at the banger racing thing. There's the bit where they meet the guys there and he gets the shotguns out and shoots him through the window. Definitely recognise his face now. But that's Ardlo Hanlon may turn up at some point. It's a strange one, this, isn't it? Because Eamon Owens, as I said, appeared in a couple of movies after this, but his career only lasted 5 or 6 years.
Sean McGlinley.
Just about to say the policeman, was he? Was he the copper? I've seen him before.
He crops up in a number of things. He's almost a professional Irishman in some respects.
Braveheart,
certain people that are brought round again and again and again as it happens. So, and if we get round to doing some of the films like The Van and stuff like that, a lot of these all flood back into the list because they were already in there as part of the overall cast of the Irish that just reappears and reappears. I think the only surprise from this film really is you didn't have somebody like Colin Meaney. Never, I was expecting his face to pop up the first time I watched it. But,
is this Star Trek sort of time? Is he in Hollywood at this point?
It could be that he was away on it, but he kept popping back to do Irish films. But yeah, I mean, I saw this at the cinema, so I had an experience like you of wow, what the hell have I just and obviously in those days there was no real advance notice about what was coming on.
We relied on trailers, didn't we? That was it.
Yeah, and I don't think I'd even seen a trailer for it. I just went on it on advice of whoever I was going out with at the time.
Yeah,
because it it was a Neil Jordan, and we didn't know it was going to be the last ever Geffen film.
No.
From that film production company. But I went in blind and came out, into the dark, squinting into bright lights after having watched this, and was like, what? And then decided, yes, it was something I felt compelled to go back to. And I think I've probably watched it 4 or 5 times overall.
Let me ask you about that then, because obviously, as I say, my first time watch. How does it progress after watching it several times? I mean, obviously, you're going to get the same reaction on that first viewing with me. It's just a bit, whoa, this is a roller coaster. Like you said, you're hanging on for grim death and just hoping that, we get to the end of this somehow, because everything is being thrown at you at 100 miles an hour. Does it slow down a bit? The second or the third watch, did you manage to absorb a bit more and see some of the nuances in the performances and the language and what's going on? Yeah,
absolutely. With every watch, it loses a bit of the shock element, just because it's not still there's shocking bits in it in a way, but it's not the same form of shock. On the offset to that, you are noticing more nuances in there, and it does have enough nuances in it to be worthy of repeated watching. And it's one of those that we've given examples of before, where it's a film maybe not to go back to next week, but to go back to in 6 months' time or whatever, and you have progressive distance between watches to give you a bit more time, so you don't become over familiar with it. But on the other side, it is a gift that keeps giving, really, and it sounds depending on how you describe it, and I can accept I might not be able to be the most skilled at doing this, but if you describe it well, it's a film that sounds so intriguing that people feel they have to go and watch and will actually get something out of it. Unfortunately, it'd be very easy to describe this badly and make it a film people would go, I don't want to go anywhere now. The subject matter is just so dark.
We haven't given too much away in this review. We've I'd like people to have that same reaction that I had. That it's like they don't know where they're going to go on this movie. I think it's a great movie to watch blind. I think. Because I think I got so much more out of it. Because as I said, I was edge of the seat. Just breathless almost, just trying to keep up with it. And at every scene or every corner, it would go into a darker place. And I'm thinking, okay, but don't get put off by the darkness, because as you said, it is a black comedy. There is humour that goes with it, and some of the very, very dark stuff is hilarious as well at the same time, depending on your sense of humour.
Blackest of black humour. I mean, you various things that carry on through the narrative to crop up again, things that get said, and they can, they get referenced at the most obscure points when really it should be quite a dark and depressive and disconcerting point, and then there's just some silly thing that's said or reference made to something else, and sometimes that's in the voiceover, the way that the voiceover is characterizing his otherworldly outlook, his fantasy outlook almost, of the way that he is trying to make sense of the world within his own sanity, and that lifts it to a different level, which, as you say, the shock is there. Part of me wonders what it'd be like to watch it without the voiceover. And
that would make it darker, I think.
It would make it 10 times darker. Yeah. And, it might spoil the narrative a bit, because some of the things actually, it's not so much a narrative as in narration, in the sense of telling you that what's happening in the story. It's more telling you what's going on in his head. That element totally shifts it, and it's based upon a book, which there was a struggle with, to try and get the book into a way that could be filmed. And then the writer of the original book, who was involved in the screenplay, admitted he struggled, and it was Neil Jordan coming in and actually been involved in turning it into a screenplay helped. And I don't know whether that was his part, Neil Jordan coming in and giving the narrative bit to bridge the gap between the two, because if the book is strongly based upon what's coming from the boy's interpretation of the world, you can't put that into how he's acting on screen. You've got to have that in some way voice in his head.
Well, there's a lovely quote on Wikipedia, of all things, that Patrick McCabe's accomplishment with the Butcher Boys was deemed unattainable in a film. During the screenwriting process, McCabe wrote 2 drafts that digressed so much from the original novel that Neil Jordan described it like planets within planets within planets. Jordan wrote the 3rd draft that was more faithful to the novel, although the ending has changed apparently. And interestingly, McCabe, the author, is the town drunk, Jimmy the Skite.
Yeah.
That's him. So I didn't realise that until I've just read that here. So, yes, it looks like it's one of those novels that was deemed unfilmable, but thank God for Neil Jordan, who managed to turn it around by the look of it and made it into something that they could present on the screen. With all this in mind, I mean, in my rating system, I'm only going to give it a 3. Now, as you know, it's sort of based on how much I enjoy it out of 5 stars. I enjoyed it, but I had to work hard with this one.
Yeah.
But going in blind, as I've mentioned. And I'd still recommend that to anybody. Try not to see a trailer or to read too much of a synopsis. Just base your first viewing on what we're saying, that you will be rewarded, and it's not a gentle Irish comedy. It's... Is that a fair way of describing it?
That's a bloody understatement, that is. Fuck me.
But it's not that shocking that you're going to be repulsed by it. It's not a gore film, or it's not something that's that dark you're going to like, oh God, I've got to switch that off. You will be watching it and chuckling away and sort of chuckling at yourself for laughing at the dark bits. Do you see what I mean? Yeah.
To some extent, that although there is some bits of violence and stuff in it, I think that the thing that's most disconcerting and jarring is not that the scenes like that. It's the anarchy of this boy's mind, of what's going on in his head and trying to keep up to some extent. I mean, there are some. It's not like the film does go at 300 miles an hour, because it's set in the rural Irish countryside, so there's scenes of laid by the riverbank, or things like this, and particularly scenes where he's doing stuff on his own, where he's walking around on his own and doing stuff. But the way you get to the end of it and you just think, right, what have I watched?
Yeah.
And what would that mean? Mm-hmm. And how should I feel about this?
That's what I mean. It's getting a 3. Based on the fact that I had to work hard. I couldn't relax watching this film because I didn't want to miss anything. Because as we said, it was going at 100 miles an hour. So it's like, okay, where are we now? Okay, so this is happening. And looking back now with the benefit of having a couple of days of hindsight, the things like the gentle unravelling of his mother's sanity is blindingly obvious now. But at the time when I'm watching the movie for the first time, it's just like quirky, as we've said before. But it's also now, thinking back, it's like, wow, that's quite sad. That is very sad, the way that part of the story was depicted.
But I think, as you've said, it depicts how, at the time, these things weren't recognised with the modern view of mental illness and behaviour and stuff. It captures that different era and viewpoint.
Mars going off to the garage,
to have
her head screwed on. Basically, that's how it's summed up, which is marvellous.
She comes back and makes cakes.
That's the bit that got me. That's the bit I was referring to. That unravelling again, and without giving too much away, when he walks in and just asks Mum why there's a chair on the table, and looking back, silly little, almost throwaway scenes.
You dropped your pills on the floor.
Dropped your pills on the floor. Yeah. I don't think they're working. It's just gentle little nudges like that. I'll urge anybody to watch this. I mean, you saw it for the first time on the big screen. Is it a big screen movie? I'm going to guess not.
It doesn't have to be. No. And subsequent watches, it does become easier and less intense to watch it, and more of a joy to watch it, to be honest. You allow it to just be a almost not quite a joyful ride, but you you can treat it in a different way than you experienced it first time around, and particularly with enjoying it as a piece of filmmaking as well, to be fair. So it's something as usual, the caveat, it's not for everybody, but I would encourage people to go and investigate it, whatever way they can, streaming service or whatever. It's something that is to some extent lost and people don't know about it. It's not a high profile film, particularly not as high profile as some of Neil Jordan's other films that he's done. And there are a few on there that his CV that we're probably going to revisit, I imagine, over time. Mona Lisa and such like. But this is something I think that has a lot to give, given the chance. But do accept it might need a second watch to fully appreciate.
Oh, I bet even on your fourth watch this time round,
bits, yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. Okay. Let's take a breath, because it is a breathless movie for something that you think's not going to be. It took me totally by surprise, that's all I can say. It's The Butcher Boy from 1997. Let's take a short break. We'll be back after this. Okay, Stephen, what we're watching next time is down to me, I believe. So I wanted to lighten the mood a little following The Butcher Boy. I had something in mind originally, but it was going to be a fairly recent film. It was going to be a comedy, but I'm thinking, no, I'm going to step back a few decades. And I also wanted to take the opportunity to focus a little on an actor that we have seriously overlooked over the past 3 years. Okay. I'm just going to drop some clues here. I'm not asking you to guess, but it's a film that will give you a little bit of work to do with regard to the Village Hall of Fame, I'm afraid, as it features, and this is just a snapshot, mate, it features Richard Attenborough, William Hartnell, Victor Madden, John the Measurer, amongst many, and there's also an uncredited appearance by the Duchess herself, Marianne Stone.
Oh, bless.
So that's worth watching in itself, just because of Marianne Stone. But I'm not focusing on any of these actors or actresses. There's one that we have criminally overlooked. It's back to 1956, and it's a movie starring Ian Carmichael. It's a Bolting Brothers movie.
Oh,
yes, but the chap I wanted to focus on, you brought this up the other week and reminded me that we have not covered a Terry Thomas movie. Is that right?
That's absolutely true. And this is on my list, and it's probably was going to be the first one I was going to suggest as a Terry Thomas film we visit, and so I'm so happy this is
we're going to do Private's Progress, and the reason I wanted to do Private's Progress because it's going to lead into things like the excellent I'm All Right Jack from 59, because there is that sequence of Bolting Brothers movies that featured Peter Sellers, Ian Carmichael, Terry Thomas. In fact, I'm All Right Jack has got almost exactly the same cast.
Yes, there was like a triptych almost, wasn't there?
Yeah. So we'll try and do them in order. So let's get the ball rolling with this one. May need to mop up the Terry Thomas mess that, we haven't cleared up. And also it's just back to a good old-fashioned 1950s British comedy, The Bolting Brothers, and a cast of thousands that everybody's going to recognise.
Brilliant.
Different kind of humour. Different kind of humour to The Butcher Boy.
Absolutely it is. And yes, it's going to be an avalanche with the Hall of Fame and etc.
Do apologise.
And etc. No, it's fine. But and John Bolton, obviously, we regularly eulogise about him. I think this is another point within British cinema where there were example of a film that did sort of roll out and bring something to this. It wasn't just another one in comedies out there that was put out there. It's something that did actually hit a mark higher than the average.
Yes.
And they managed to actually capitalise upon that. So it's great shout, and I'm really happy that you've taken us to it.
It's not comedy as well. It's also social commentary as well. When you look at the three movies as well,
it stands the test of time better. I think.
We're looking at the military side of things. When we get to I'm All Right, Jack, you will be in your element when it comes to that one.
Yeah,
and I'm just looking forward to it, and I'm hoping that we could get all three covered pretty sharpish actually. So, I'd like to do them all pretty, in sequence very quickly. So let's see how we go. But that's going to be the next one. It's Private's Progress from 1956. Stephen, thank you. Well, I'm going to say thank you for The Butcher Boy. I'm not sure if I want to thank you or not, because I'm still not too sure how I feel about it. I will highly recommend it to anybody, just to give it a go. Give it a go, because you will be rewarded in one way or another. That's the only thing I can say. It's obviously a favourite of yours because you've watched it 4 times now. I'm going to give it another go in a year or so, possibly, and then just see if my opinion changes, which I'm sure it will. It'll go up a notch, as we've said many times before. But no, thanks for that today, mate.
Glad you could take it on board, and you're seeing that there's something to revisit with it as well as a future thing in your library.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's good.
Okay, this has been Reel Britannia. It's going to be Private's Progress next time. I've been Scott. He's been Stephen. Thank you very much, mate. See you very soon. Take care.
Take care.
Shower. A positive shower. Bon voyage. Good luck. Thank you.
Keeping the British end up, sir.